Greetings, everyone. Hello, and welcome to FECG TV, which is the Fisher Educational Consulting Group television channel. My name is Sean Fisher, and I'm the proud CEO and owner of the Fisher Educational Consulting Group. Today, we'll be focusing on counseling and how you can, not counseling, but rather master scheduling and how you can use the master schedule to improve outcomes or the experience for students of color or marginalized communities. Today, our guest speaker, our guest educator is Ms. Genovia Peterson, who is a counselor. Before we go any further, I just want to take a moment to highlight a little bit about the background of Ms. Peterson. Genovia Peterson is currently working as a high school counselor in the third largest district in Michigan. Her professional experiences include working in both urban and suburban environments, school counseling, and teaching at both the middle school and high school levels, school improvement chair, along with servicing as director/site coordinator of several out-of-school programs. Genovia is a resident of Southeastern Michigan. She holds a Master's of Art in both K through 12 administration and in counseling from Eastern Michigan University. She also holds a Bachelor's of Science in Secondary Education with a minor in English from Temple University. Genovia holds the following certifications: a State of Michigan Administrator Certificate, a Teacher Certification in Secondary English, grades 6 through 12, a Professional Guidance Counseling K through 12 endorsement, and Board of Counseling Professional Counselor Limited license. With that being said, welcome, Ms. Peterson. How are you?
I'm well, thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming. So how this interview is going to go is we'll ask you a series of about 10 questions, and we want you to use those questions to kind of speak to other educators in the field who are trying to figure out a way to use master scheduling to create equity in their school.
Okay.
Thank you. So with that being said, let's go ahead and start with the first question. What made you become a counselor?
So I wanted to become a counselor because I noticed during my student teaching experience that many of the students in the classroom, they were experiencing and having social and emotional issues. And this was surprising because this was a magnet school. So I wasn't expecting those type of issues in that environment. And so I noticed that we were spending time dealing with the social emotional aspect of students' development versus the curriculum. And I found that I was interested in that area and that it was a need. So I decided to pursue my graduate degree in counseling.
Thank you so much. And I guess, a lot of those issues are still going on. So we definitely have a need for counselors, especially with regards to the social emotional learning support. So thank you for that piece. Next, I want to drill down a little bit. So of course, we're here in this interview to talk about master scheduling. So before we can get to master scheduling, maybe we could talk a little bit about roles within master scheduling. So could you tell us a little bit about what is the role of the counselor in master scheduling development? What is the role of the teacher, and what is the role of the admin?
So I'll start broad. So the creating a master schedule is a complex series of tasks and things to consider. And when doing so, you need a team. So to carry out this process thoroughly, I think the building leader is the leader of the team. He or she should be the one person facilitating, pulling all the stakeholders together. So he or she should be facilitating this activity. A counselor should be a participant on the team because they are skilled in reading data, they are skilled in communicating with stakeholders, maybe providing input on student needs that may not be present in the classroom per se. So they should be a team member. Teachers should also have a voice in the master scheduling process. So I think you can't have all teachers at the table, but you can have department heads, um, or a department chairperson, and they communicate with that grade level or subject area um, team, and then bring that information back to your master scheduling committee or team.
Thank you. So I'm wondering, once we got to a point where we've created this master schedule, utilizing the various roles that you discussed, how might one I guess, how do I want to say it? How might one audit a master schedule to determine positive and negative impacts? And actually, I'll pause there. Let me just back up. In your experience, what has been the difference between, I know you're a secondary level practitioner. What has been your experience with regards to the similarities and the differences in master scheduling for middle school versus master scheduling for high school?
Well, I think in middle school, there are less elective options. So you're focused on, the 4 subject areas, and then providing students with 2 electives. I think it's a limited in scope versus all the offerings that are in second or high school.
I'm just curious, as a seasoned practitioner with the master scheduling process, do you personally have and we're drilling down because you're actually a practitioner, so I want to highlight that. And I want our audience to know that you're speaking from experience, not theory. You've had the theoretical training, but you actually had the experience of actually doing the job. Do you have a preference? Which one did you like more? Which one is, how are they different from your actual experience? Do you have a preference in which one you like more?
Now, I am coming from the scope of a counselor. I don't think that the process in either environments, like what I talk about in the article, how it's a complex process where we're looking at multiple steps, multiple pieces, we're considering multiple data sets. I don't think I've ever seen that play out in either setting. So I think as a middle school counselor, we did look at achievement data to identify that we, identify electives that may be needed. We also provided students the opportunity to select some electives that they may be interested in taking. But, there's certain aspects in each setting that we focused in on, but I don't think we looked at the process in its totality and followed through with that like we should.
Okay, thank you. So that's a perfect segue. That leads into my next question. How might you or another counselor audit a master schedule to determine positive and negative impacts on students?
So I think this should be a team effort. So with your master scheduling.
Or maybe we replace that word then. How would a team audit the master schedule for its negative or positive
impacts? Depends on what you're looking for. So there are, that's a complex question. So it depends on what you are auditing for. Is it for, are we offering the right electives? Is our data saying that we need enrichment courses, or if we need courses to challenge students that are excelling, then we would look in academic data. If we are looking at teacher assignments, what's the best fit for the classes that we're offering, we may be looking at walkthrough data that the leadership team has and what they see in the classroom and how students are responding.
Let me write that down. That's a great point. Actually, can I hold you there and just ask you to maybe elaborate on the walkthrough piece? That's a big piece that I know administrators would be particularly interested in knowing about that. So can you expound a little bit on that piece?
So I think that just ensuring that the teacher assignments fit the needs of the students is important, and it should be considered. So when you are doing that and you're looking at auditing your schedule, how are you going to evaluate or ensure that your assignments align with student needs? And the only way to do that is use data. And the administration has that data through, evaluations, walkthroughs, things like that.
Okay, thank you so much. Our next question, what are the most important questions to ask ourselves in the master scheduling process?
So again, that's really complex. And again, it's what are we looking for? What are we thinking about, right? So what is the academic data telling us? Do we need, do students need remediation in an area? What do we need? And you would look for, you get that information from academic data. You could do surveys by teachers and students. They have insight on elective offering, like the type of electives they would like. Teachers may have some information too, because the students are talking to them, telling them what they want while they're in class, and then give the students a voice as well. So even if we have these 3 offerings, we only have room in the schedule for 2 in a middle school, which one, put the 3 on a, survey and let the students decide. So again, it's really what you're looking for. So you're going to look at building-wide data, like what are our building goals?
Thank you.
Are the courses that we are offering, do they align to our building goals? Are we getting, if we want to improve our reading and writing, are these courses that we're offering supporting that? And if not, what courses or what can we do to ensure that we are supporting the students so that they are growing and improving? And then looking at classroom data as well, so you look at the building data and then classroom data. Again, if you're looking at teacher assignments, what's most beneficial, that is, classroom achievement data is where to look as well.
Thank you. So along those lines, this next question comes from a new counselor, first year in counseling. Her question is, when creating the master schedule, how do we center academically and emotionally struggling learners?
How do we center them? I think it is more of.
I think go ahead.
So I think it's knowing the individuals in their building, their strengths, and some teachers are more patient, more understanding, more culturally aware, and maybe if possible, we place those students with teachers that we know can and will support them. So it's all about knowing teacher strengths and knowing your students.
Wow, thank you. Okay, that's something I hadn't thought about. So the human component, knowing the teachers and knowing their abilities and matching those to the emotional. Okay, that is perfect. Could you, and I just want to delve a little bit deeper, with the actual structure of these master schedule, how have you in your past practices, or how have you seen as part of the team that you've the teams that you've been on, how do you support academically struggling students? So maybe a student that shows up below grade level in math or reading.
So in my experience, there has been electives created to provide math intervention. A program was purchased to support like reading for students who lack some foundational skills. So that would have been an elective for some students.
Are you able to recall any of the names of those intervention programs?
So our math intervention, it wasn't a curriculum. It was looking at the data, providing intervention and support using, key strategies, teaching strategies to support students. Reading, there was a Read 180 program.
Read 180, okay.
That was purchased and we used to support students.
And you created, so basically you created a Read 180 elective?
Yes.
Okay, perfect, thank you. I'm just gonna put this in my notes, so we'll follow up. Okay, thank you. My next question, how do we get student voice into our master schedule?
So I think I mentioned it earlier, using surveys and communicating with students on what they would like to see in school, what they would like to experience.
Okay. In your past experience, how have the surveys, or and I think you're mentioning as well, course selection forms?
Yes.
Yep. So in your past experience, have you considered those effective in capturing student voice?
I think they can be effective. We have used course selection where, of course, all this is based on, how many teachers you'll have. It's all based on a budget that you receive. So in one situation, we were considering what world languages we can offer. And so we used the course selection to determine what world language would be offered that year. And so Arabic was being offered, students selected Spanish, and that came in the following year.
Okay, that's very helpful. So
but I've seen course selections, I'm sorry.
It sounds like, I think you're adding it. It sounds like you were just explaining how you use student data to,
yes.
You have student perception data, it sounds like.
But I've also seen course selection where we have courses that we know will not be available still on the course request or course request form. And so now students are selecting classes or, making selections for classes that will not be offered. So it can be ineffective if you're not reviewing the course selection sheet as well.
Okay, thank you. This next question actually came from an administrator counselor team.
Okay.
In your professional experience, how has your team avoided making the master schedule more adult-centered than student-centered?
Well, I think by considering the students' needs and through, teacher assignments, I also think not placing teachers in positions to be punitive. I think that is adult-centered. and counterproductive.
Okay, thank you. Now this one is very near and dear to my heart. Just speaking around marginalized communities. What does it look like to support our Black, Indigenous, people of color, students that identify in the BIPOC community? What does it look like when a master schedule considers them for support?
So I think that depending on the culture of your school or your demographics of your school, your course selection should reflect the students that you're serving. So if we have a large African American population, there should be some African American history class offered. There should be, there could be drumming offered. You have to know the culture of the students that you're serving, and you need to incorporate their culture and their history in your academic programming.
Okay. And I noticed earlier you spoke about like one of your elective foreign languages was Arabic. And just thinking about being located in Michigan, which has one of the largest Arabic speaking populations, perhaps that was something that was, that selection was reflective of the master schedule being culturally responsive.
Right.
Okay.
I absolutely agree with that. I think that students, always want, so Arabic was many of the students' first language. So when they seen that we could, I already know how to speak Arabic. I want something else. They chose Spanish. I don't know if it was a good idea, but that's what they wanted.
Okay. So, I mean, there's that piece. So there's their intersection there of we're giving the students voice is what they said they wanted, but we also have that option where their first language, by having it offered officially, it showed that we value their culture because languages are at the center of the culture. Okay. Yeah. Even though, I mean, in true teenager form, they blew that off, but it was there.
I thought it was a good idea.
Yeah, I'm sure. Despite what the counselors, their parents, and the other adults might have said. So, but there we go. That's if the kids didn't think differently than us, then we wouldn't have job security. There would be no need for us. So there we go. So now this one is. So you being a practitioner, I'm glad that we have someone who actually is a practitioner, because some of these questions are you can only answer from practice. So this question is, it kind of speaks to the relationship between counselors and teachers or other staff, because it's a unique experience. Very often counselors are in the same union as teachers, but they occupy a different role. Mm-hmm. So here's the question. School counselors are non-supervisory staff, so they cannot make supervisory decisions, and making decisions about prep times, course offerings can put them in a difficult situation with their peers, who they then have to work with and support students. How do you manage that uniqueness of your job in relation to your peers?
So,
well, actually, that's a real world question. Have you ever had a peer or someone be slightly upset with you as a counselor because it's the master schedule or assignment that they got?
I don't think so, because I think that the classroom assignments are discussed by the school leader. Mm-hmm. So although we didn't have an official team, I think I worked closely with the building administrator. And so if a class assignment was, if there was a change in class assignment, that was a conversation that he had with the teacher versus it coming from me. Now, prep times, I don't know if they were necessarily communicated. This is your schedule, but our prep times, we try to make like if you're meeting, so middle school, you're meeting with your grade level, with a grade level team or a content area team. So you had the same prep time. So I think because that had been going on prior to me arriving, that was just the norm. They knew that whatever their prep was, it was encouraging collaboration. So they would be working with their colleagues.
Okay, thank you. And it sounds like, as I'm just, give me a moment, I'm just capturing my thoughts as I'm thinking back to what you said. So it seems like your team navigated the potential conflict between counselors and staff by, it sounds like the school leader was very clear in articulating that this is my decision and this is my team, but they're executing my vision. So if you have concerns, those concerns lie with me, and maybe those communications should occur with, it sounds like you said him.
Yes. Okay. So, we had a couple of conversations about, what we saw. We did look at some data. And then unfortunately, we just, we use a skeleton schedule. We, start filling it in. But I think that the building leader did take the initiative. So he knew that these conversations should not come from the counselor. It's not the counselor's role to have these conversations.
So, okay. So it sounds like clarity of communication resolved it before it ever was an issue. Is that? Yes.
And I think it, in certain situations, it can become an issue because as a counselor in Michigan, we are in the same teacher union. Well, we are in the union with teachers, and there has been times where the lines get blurred based on the roles.
Okay, thank you. I just want to pare back. So for some of our viewers that are new to counseling and or perhaps new, or just the scheduling piece has not been part of their job duties before, could you elaborate on certain specific vocabulary you use? Meaning, you use the word skeleton schedule. Could you elaborate on what that is? Tell us what a skeleton.
That is just someone copying the schedule that they had the previous year, and pretty much it's almost like it's just copying the same schedule over, and you may like move a couple teachers around, but pretty much the same courses without evaluating their need, same offerings, not really considering course selections or the numbers. You know what I mean? You just, we offered four PE classes. We're going to have 4 PE classes, not knowing if you needed more or less based on the data.
It sounds like you're saying that's traditionally a starting point. It's not the finishing point,
yes.
That's the starting point.
I think many times it's the starting point. Unfortunately, sometimes it's the ending point as well.
Well, we like your honesty of that. Okay, good. Well, Ms. Peterson, we are coming up to the end of the interview, and I have one last question to ask before we close out. So give us a last statement, maybe if you had to summarize how master scheduling can, and actually we're going to bring you back for the FECG, the Fisher Educational Consulting Group, to actually teach a one-day professional learning session on the basics of master scheduling and how impactful it can be in developing a philosophy behind master scheduling. So with that in mind, answer this question. Leave us with, how do you feel master scheduling can be used to be a powerful equity tool?
So it is a tool. I think scheduling is a tool to improve student learning. So that would be my statement. Um, and it is done through multiple steps and just planning, not starting in June, but starting in May or February, I'm sorry, February or March, and beginning that process for the next year.
Okay, so it sounds like giving it the amount of time is something that important needs.
Yes.
Oh, okay, and I noticed that you mentioned earlier, you kept coming back to the importance of gathering data and letting it inform the process.
Correct.
Okay.
So yes, identifying your team, beginning to pull data and review it, beginning to have conversations with, support staff and teacher leaders in the building, and beginning, coming up with your course selections and getting the surveys out to students, collecting that data, reviewing it, and then starting the actual scheduling process.
Thank you. So that was our last question, and that concludes our interview. Thank you, Ms. Peterson.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, you're welcome. So this is Sean Fisher, proud CEO and owner of the Fisher Educational Group, and this has been a Fisher Educational Consulting Group television event where we interviewed Ms. Genovia Peterson, who is a counselor in the state of Michigan, servicing Michigan's third largest school district, and she was discussing the importance of master scheduling as a tool for equity. Please check back on our website, because in the near future, she'll be instructing a course or a one-day professional, she'll be presenting a one-day professional learning session on master scheduling basics and how you can use it to bring equity about. Thank you for joining us, and have a great day.